everyone, Vanessa here. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017, and today I'm going to be reading from Keep It Simple. And today is the 21st, and so I'm going to read from today's reading, and what happens is I will read it, I will reflect on it, and then I'll read it again. I encourage you to leave comments, share about your experience, tell me how any of this resonated for you, whether you agree, disagree, etc. Okay. And also, I just want to thank you for being here and appreciate all of us doing this together in community. And, our recovery life is a life that can feel really lonely, but that actually we are living together. So if you are struggling or if you're just kind of looking for new ways to grow spiritually, these are great readings. And I hope that you'll check out some of my other videos as well. Okay, so January 21st. What is defeat? Nothing but the first step to something better. Wendell Phillips. A person walks into a meeting. They say, I surrender. I can't drink like other folks. We smile and welcome them. We know that feeling. All of us in the program must admit defeat. Our disease is more powerful than we are. We begin recovery when we surrender. Admitting defeat is our first step into a wonderful world. Like all first steps, it's hard. But what a world we find ourselves in. A world where we count, a world where all are really equal. The first step brings us into a world of care where we get love and we give love. We stay sober because daily we admit defeat. Prayer for the day. I surrender. I can't drink and use other drugs. I'm different. Higher power, help me surrender daily. Action for the day. Every so often, I need to admit defeat and talk about what it was like, what happened, and where I am now. Cool. So, to be really honest, I kind of dissociated for half of that reading, so I'm kind of rereading it back to myself. The first step brings us into a world of care where we get love and we give love. Yeah. Here's the thing. Man, I think the addicts and alcoholics have this really unique skill and ability to not go down without a fight. I'm telling you, I just was not going to admit defeat over alcohol. It was humiliating. It was embarrassing. It was shameful. It felt like a real loser move to be like, oh, I'm an alcoholic. It just felt like that wasn't a part of a label or an identity that I wanted to assume and take with me into the rest of my life. And also culturally at the time, I think there have been huge changes in sobriety talk, and people are just getting sober just for the heck of it now, even without a problem, which I think is great. I think that we should introduce more sobriety from a lot of things, not just from drugs and alcohol, but from a lot of things in our culture and our society. But I feel like, at the time it was so much more stigmatized. And this isn't to say that my experience was like harder or anything that it would be to get sober nowadays. I still think, well, no, I know that it's still difficult to admit defeat over something like this, regardless of how many strides we've made as a society to be more accepting and understanding of people with addictions. But to really submit myself to this experience of understanding that and acknowledging and admitting, not just to myself, but to other people, that there was this problem that I had that I couldn't control. It just made me feel so small. And so I wouldn't admit it. And I really, even though people around me were telling me that I had a problem, it wasn't until I was finally like, okay, maybe they are right. And it would really, the only thing that made me come around finally after 2 years of being in meetings was the stories of people I heard around me who I saw being like really happy, successful, well-adjusted, so wise. These people were so just full of wisdom. And, they would say things that made a lot of sense to me. And then they would say, yeah, well, I was also blackout drunk, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be like, wait, what? And hearing how they spoke about recovery and sobriety made me feel like, oh, okay, so I can admit this powerlessness over this thing and still be really powerful in this other way that maybe I hadn't expected to be. And, that was a really life-changing experience. And in being able to do that, I did step into a beautiful world. Like all first steps, it is hard. But once it was just like, I just can't like, I just imagine kind of carrying this pack of like, I'm sorry, carrying this weight with me, and just like knowing that there was nothing good for it. It was like carrying a backpack full of rocks and like people just being like, just let it go. And if you just drop it, but like me convincing myself that these rocks had some kind of value but all the value that it was just this burden that I had grown comfortable with. And also, like, what I just didn't know what it would feel like to walk without that burden on me anymore. And so, this realization or this acceptance to just kind of be like, okay, now I'm just going to drop this pack and just being able to drop it and have that weight lifted. And also going through this process of like, oh, I thought that pack was part of me, but it turns out it wasn't. I thought that that pack was something that maybe I couldn't really, I thought it was, I had had that heavy pack, as uncomfortable as it was with me for so long, that I had come to only see myself in reflections with it and to only really be known as the girl with the backpack and all this. And it's just like, oh no, that wasn't really me that whole time. Okay, well then who am I now? Who am I that I can run a little faster? I'm a little bit more nimbler. I can get around a little quicker without this pack of burden weighing me down. And it's just it takes a whole new acclimation to a new way of living, right? But it takes that initial getting used to of like, oh, this thing that's hurting me is not actually me, and I can say that it is this separation, right? It is like this addiction, alcohol, my alcoholism and who I was in my alcoholism was not really me. And I can't, it killed me to hear people say that like, oh, who you are when you're drunk is who you really are. And I'm like, ugh, I don't know, man. I was just talking to a friend about this actually, because we're like, I don't know. There's some things I'm glad I was blacked out for because they would haunt me to this day if I could recall any of those memories. And I already have enough of those. So it's like, but then the next day hearing these stories from people of like, did you know what you did last night? Or like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. And I'm just like, I can't believe it either. Like, that is just not how I think or how I feel. And that's so embarrassing. And that's not how I want to carry myself out in the world. Like, that's not who I want to reflect myself as being. And so, it would kill me because I'm like, well, who am I without that? Who am I without the alcoholism, without the drinking, without the day drinking, without the brunches, without the night drinking until I pass out? Like, who am I without those things? And so letting go of that and being like, well, let me separate myself from this alcohol and see just who I am. And you know what? I'm not to toot my own horn here, but I'm a lot better. I'm way cooler without all the booze. I could tell you that. Even just, I couldn't even, then you think of the occasional drink. This is why I know I'm an alcoholic, because then an occasional drink, what for? Like what is that all about? I wouldn't even want to. I just don't even want to. It sounds so boring. So yeah, I do agree. Just that first step into a beautiful world, we begin recovery when we surrender. Oh, but this is what I wanted to say is that it doesn't just stop with the alcohol. That is the first step, clearly. It's the first one, right? It's being able to surrender this addiction, this alcoholism. And second is getting into the habit of surrendering everything else that we can't control. So, I also had to surrender my beliefs around what I thought my life was going to look like. And I mean, on a daily basis, even recently, I've just had to surrender these ideas of how I think I wanted things to be. And just being like, well, that's just not how it's going to be, and having to surrender that. And, I surrender a lot of that to God and to my higher power and just being like, well, it ain't going the way that I thought it was going to go. And instead of continuing to be misdirected or misguided or following down this trail that is ultimately not going where I'm thinking it's going to go, let me just surrender that to God and let it go. And I can do that in a lot of ways around, finances, jobs, relationships, family stuff, health stuff. Oh God, the political stuff in this freaking country, living situations, friendship situations. I mean, over and over again, I've just had to be like, I really hope that this goes this way, but I get so addicted to that fear and to that anticipation, to the expectation that something work out a certain way that now I'm like, but if it doesn't, it just doesn't, having to surrender to the addiction of control that I've had in the past and just being like, but it's not in my control. I just have to let go of that and let go, or like having any regret around how things do turn out. If things could have turned out differently, they would have, but this is where we're at now. So I do feel like pushing this surrender, not just with the alcohol, but like where else can we be surrendering, and It's really important, and it just continues to open and open and open more doors to this beautiful world that we can be experiencing. Bring us into a world of care where we get love and we give love. Amen. So I'm going to go through and read this one more time. Would love to hear your experiences in the comments about any of that. Okay, let's go. January 21st. What is defeat? Nothing but the first step to something better. Wendell Phillips. A person walks into a meeting. They say, I surrender. I can't drink like other folks. We smile and welcome them. We know that feeling. All of us in the program must admit defeat. Our disease is more powerful than we are. We begin recovery when we surrender. Admitting defeat is our first step in a beautiful world. Like all first steps, it's hard. But what a world we find ourselves in, a world where we count, a world where all are really equal. The first step brings us into a world of care where we get love and we give love. We stay sober because because daily we admit defeat. Prayer for the day. I surrender. I can't drink and use other drugs. I'm different. Higher power, help me surrender daily. Action for the day. Every so often, I need to admit defeat and talk about what it was like, what happened, and where I am now. All right, you guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I love you and I hope you're having a great day. Bye.